What if the Roman Empire had gunpowder, 1,000 years before it was invented? Picture this. The year is 60 AD. Rome rules the known world. Its legions stretch from Britain to Syria, from the Rhine to the deserts of Egypt. It is the most powerful empire the world has ever seen. And it does this with iron, wood, and discipline. Swords, shields, spears, catapults that throw stones. The Roman war machine is the deadliest thing on earth, and it does not have a single explosive in it. Now change one thing, one small thing, a formula. A black powder made of charcoal, sulfur, and saltpeter, mixed in the right proportions. In the real history, this powder does not appear until Chinese alchemists stumble onto it around the 9th century, almost 1,000 years from now. But what if Rome had it now, not the cannon, not the musket, just the powder and the knowledge of what it does? Because here's the truth that most people get wrong about gunpowder. The hard part was never the explosion. The hard part was figuring out the recipe. And Rome, with its engineers, its mines, its endless organized labor, was more capable of mass-producing that recipe than almost any society before the modern age. So the real question is not whether Rome could make gunpowder. The question is what Rome would become if it did. Start with the mines. In 60 AD, Rome controls vast deposits across its territory. Sulfur from the volcanic fields near Naples, charcoal from the forests of Gaul and Germania, and saltpeter, the hardest ingredient, scraped from the walls of stables, cellars, and caves where animal waste and time create it naturally. Rome has all three. What it does not have is the knowledge to combine them. Give it that knowledge, and within a generation, Rome does what Rome always does best. It industrializes, it systematizes, it turns a discovery into a machine. Imperial workshops spring up near the mines. Slaves and engineers grind, mix, and test, refining the proportions until the powder burns fast and clean. The Romans, masters of standardization, do not make gunpowder by guesswork the way medieval Europe later will. They make it the Roman way, measured, consistent, produced by the ton, stamped and stored in state arsenals, distributed along the same incredible road network that already moves the legions. This is the thing people miss. The danger of Roman gunpowder is not that one emperor has a secret weapon. It is that the most organized state in the ancient world can manufacture it at industrial scale 1,000 years early. Now put it on the battlefield. The first and most obvious use is the siege. Rome already conquers cities by surrounding them, starving them, and grinding through their walls with catapults and battering rams over weeks or months. A siege is slow, expensive, and bloody. Gunpowder changes everything about it. The Romans, brilliant engineers, do not need to invent the cannon to use powder. They invent the mine first. They are already masters of digging. They tunnel under enemy walls all the time, prop the tunnel with wood, and burn the props to collapse the wall. Now they tunnel under the wall and pack the chamber with barrels of powder. The first time a Roman siege engineer collapses a city wall with a single buried charge, the ancient world changes forever. Walls that took months to breach now fall in an afternoon. Fortifications that defined warfare for 3,000 years become suddenly, terrifyingly obsolete. No city in the known world is safe behind stone anymore, and word spreads. A wall is no longer protection. A wall is just a place where the Romans will bury their thunder. Then come the bombs. Rome does not need rifled artillery to weaponize powder in the open field. It needs only a clay or iron container packed with powder and scrap metal with a slow-burning fuse. A grenade, a bomb thrown by hand, or hurled by the catapults Rome already has in the thousands. Imagine a barbarian army on the Rhine, a horde of Germanic warriors charging a Roman line the way they always have, expecting the familiar clash of shield and sword. And instead the sky fills with arcing iron pots that burst among them in fire and shrapnel, and a noise like the end of the world. An army that has never heard an explosion does not break, it shatters. It is not just killed. It is unmade, psychologically, in an instant. This is the second great advantage, and it might be bigger than the first. Gunpowder's earliest power is not its damage, it is its terror. Against enemies who have no concept of it, the sound alone wins battles. Men who would charge a wall of spears without flinching will run screaming from fire that falls from the sky, because their minds have no box to put it in. Picture it from the other side. A Germanic war chief has gathered his tribes for the kind of charge that once destroyed whole legions. His warriors hit the Roman line expecting bronze and blood and the press of bodies. Then the first iron pot lands in the middle of his formation and turns 10 men into smoke and screaming. Then another, then a dozen at once. The chief is not beaten by a better sword or a stronger arm. He is beaten by a thing he has no word for, and the bravest men in his army are running before they have lost a single duel. That is the kind of victory gunpowder hands Rome. Not a harder battle won, but a battle that ends before it begins. So now imagine the trajectory of an empire that already conquers everything, suddenly handed the power to flatten any city in a day, and to scatter any army with thunder. Then look at the sea. Rome's navy already rules the Mediterranean, but it fights the old way. Ships ram each other, or pull alongside so soldiers can board, and turn a sea battle into a land battle on a wooden deck. It is slow, and it is brutal, and it depends entirely on getting close. Gunpowder rewrites naval war just as completely as it rewrites the siege. Roman engineers do not need a true naval cannon to weaponize powder at sea. They need only their bombs and their existing catapults mounted on the deck. A Roman warship that can hurl exploding pots into an enemy hull at a distance no longer has to risk boarding at all. It can shatter the enemy from across the water, set wooden ships ablaze, and turn a fleet action into a slaughter before the enemy oars ever touch. A Mediterranean that Rome already controls becomes a Roman lake no rival can ever challenge. The borders that stopped Rome in the real history might not stop it now. In the real history, Rome reached limits. The forests of Germania, where the legions were ambushed and slaughtered. The deserts of Parthia in the east, where Roman armies bled against horse archers. The cold edge of Scotland, where Rome eventually built a wall and simply gave up going further. These were the places where Roman discipline met terrain and enemies that blunted it. Gunpowder bends some of those limits. The fortified cities of Parthia and the east, which resisted Rome for centuries, fall to buried charges. The fortress strongholds across the empire's frontier become breakable. An empire that could already out-organize anyone can now out-explode them too. But here is where the story gets more interesting and more honest. Because gunpowder does not make Rome invincible. It makes Rome more dangerous, but it also plants the seeds of new problems Rome is not ready for. The first problem is the enemy learning. A secret weapon is only a secret once. The first time Rome buries a charge under a city wall, thousands of enemy soldiers and civilians see the result. The formula itself can be stolen, bought, or reverse engineered. Sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter are not rare. Within a few decades, Rome's enemies, the Parthians in the east, the Germanic tribes, eventually have powder of their own. And the moment both sides have explosives, the Roman advantage shrinks back toward the thing it always really was. Organization, discipline, logistics. The second problem is internal. Rome's real weakness was never its enemies. It was itself. Civil wars, assassinated emperors, generals who turned their legions against the capital to seize the throne. The empire spent as much energy fighting itself as fighting outsiders. Now hand those rival generals gunpowder. A Roman civil war fought with explosives is a far more destructive thing than one fought with swords. Emperors can be killed with a single buried charge under a palace. Cities held by rivals can be flattened. The same weapon that lets Rome crush its enemies abroad makes it far easier for Rome to tear itself apart at home. An empire already prone to coups and civil wars might burn through them faster and bloodier, collapsing not from outside pressure, but from inside detonation. And the third problem is the deepest one. Knowledge does not stay in a box. Once Rome understands that the right mixture of common minerals can release enormous force, the idea cannot be unthought. Roman engineers, the same minds that built aqueducts and roads and domes that still stand today, would not stop at bombs and buried charges. Give them powder and a few generations, and the logic of the cannon, the firearm, the rocket becomes almost inevitable. The technological clock of the entire human race jumps forward by 1,000 years. Think about what that means. Gunpowder in the real history arrived alongside printing, mathematics, and the slow growth of science that made it controllable. Hand it to a society 1,000 years before any of that, and you get the destructive power of an age the world is not ready for in the hands of an empire that runs on slavery, conquest, and the will of one man at the top. Maybe Rome never falls in the year it did. Maybe it conquers further than it ever dreamed. Or maybe it accelerates its own collapse, blowing itself apart in gunpowder civil wars centuries early, and drags the ancient world into a dark age with weapons no one understands how to limit. That is the strange truth of the whole scenario. Gunpowder would not simply make Rome win. It would make Rome more powerful, more dangerous, more destructive, and more unstable, all at the same time. It would amplify everything Rome already was, the genius and the cruelty and the self-destruction, and turn the volume all the way up. The Roman Empire did not fall because it lacked weapons. It rose and fell on organization, ambition, and the endless human habit of turning power against itself. Gunpowder would not have changed that nature. It would only have given it a louder, deadlier voice. And perhaps that is the real lesson hiding inside this what if. A civilization is not defined by the weapons it holds. It is defined by what it chooses to do with them. Hand the most organized, ambitious, and ruthless empire of the ancient world the power of thunder 1,000 years early, and you do not get a better Rome. You just get a Rome that can reach the heights and the horrors of its nature far, far faster. Of course, this is completely a what-if scenario. It is one of those questions that is fun to turn over before falling asleep, with no real answer. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it, how much of history was decided not by what people knew, but by when they knew it. So what do you think? Would gunpowder have made Rome rule the world forever, or burn itself out 1,000 years early? Write your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.